Hi, I'm here. Oh, eek. Time for Frankenstein tea already today. Wow, this day zipping along here. Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. They're connecting me. Come on, you can connect me. Oh, maybe I'm there. I think I'm going to go with that. I'm there. Usually this connection is good. There's my dad. Dad, am I stable? Am I there? Hi, Dad. Mm. All right. So it's Wednesday, not Saturday, despite how it may feel to some of us. It is January 27th, 2021. We are making our way through January here. That's a mixed bag for us here at the library. We're Islanders who enjoy January, who look forward to it, who treasure the quiet and the solitude and the time to regroup and maybe winter a little bit, winter over. And I think I as part of what I do at the library and as part of what I do in this town is I started a podcast last year with a very good friend of mine. And so it's the library and the medical center, myself and Allison Warfel representing those institutions and just ourselves, just our personal take on things. We started talking about this. We're going to launch our second season this week, and we recorded a session, and we sort of were talking about this idea of what were the lessons of COVID? What did we learn about ourselves during COVID and this time of shelter in place and small pods and isolation? And what did we learn during that? And what are we going to carry with us? What works for us during those times? What has worked? What do you need to stay true to and honor that you learned about yourself during this time? So we at the library honor January. We love it, always have. And of course, that was pre-COVID last year, January. So this January is a little different. It's COVID and we wear masks and the library's not particularly busy and we don't see nearly as many people and patrons as we should be seeing. In a normal year, it's fine for a COVID year. But, this idea of being away is, that's real. That's happening. Now it says my internet is coming and going. I don't know what's going on with the internet today. I'm going to say that you can see me and hear me, and I'm going to go for it. So I have a couple things that I want to read. I'm sort of lining up some readings and when am I going to read when? I'm sort of having that kind of moment. I want to do some honoring of African-American writing for Black History Month next month. Maybe not only limited to African-American writing, maybe literature from around the world with people of color and their own voice. So I'm sort of thinking about those things and where does that leave me for the next few days and, that kind of stuff. So, so today I'm reading from this book. This is from 2002. This is the short story compilation. This one, so 2002 is getting old. This is put out by Houghton Mifflin Company, 2002. It's edited by Sue Miller, and she picked this as the closing short story of this edition. Yakori Waters. The title of this short story is Aftermath. In Imayima Park, the boys are playing dodgeball, a new American game. Behind them, tall poplars rise up through the low-lying dusk, intercepting the last of the sun's rays, which dazzle the leaves with white and gold. Makiko can hardly believe her son, Toshi, belongs with these older boys, 7 years old. Once his growth had seemed commensurate with the passage of time. These last few years, however, with the war and surrender, the changes have come too fast, skimming her consciousness like pebbles skipped over water. Makiko is grateful the war is over, but she cannot ignore a nagging sense that Japan's surrender has spawned a new threat, one more subtle, more diffuse. She can barely articulate it, even to herself, feels unmoored, buffeted among invisible forces surging all around her. As if caught up in these energies, her son's thin body is rapidly lengthening. Look! Within that circle in the dirt, he is dodging, he is fainting. His body twists with an unfamiliar grace, foreshadowing that of a young man. Toshi's growth is abetted by a new lunch program at school that is subsidized by the American government, which has switched with dizzying speed from enemy to ally. Each day her son comes home with alien food in his stomach, bread, cheese, bottled milk. Last week in the pocket of his shorts, Makiko found a cube of condensed peanut butter, an American dessert, Toshi explained, which he had meant to save for later. It was coated with lint from his pocket, which he brushed off, ignoring her plea to get rid of that dirty thing. Each day, Toshi comes home with questions she cannot answer. Who was Magellan? How do you say, my name is Toshi, in English? How do you play baseball? Makiko shows him the games her own mother taught her. She bounces an imaginary ball, chanting a ditty passed down from the Edo period. Yellow topknots of the Portuguese wives spiraled like seashells and stuck upon their heads. Hold one up to your ear, shake it up and down. A little shrunken brain is rattling inside. In the old days, she tells him, they used to put something inside the rubber balls, maybe a scrap of iron, she wasn't sure, that made a rattling noise. Toshi, too old now for this sort of amusement, sighs with impatience. Just 4 years ago, Toshi's head had been too big for his body, endearingly out of proportion, like the head of a stuffed animal. Even then, he had a manly, square-jawed face, not unlike that of a certain city council candidate appearing on election posters at the time. Her husband, Yatshitsune, nicknamed his son Mr. Magistrate. Before going off to war, Yatshitsune had developed a little routine with their son. Oi, Toshi, are you a man? Yatshitsune would prompt in his droll tone, using the words otoko, with its connotations of male bravery, strength, and honor. He would ask this question several times a day, even before neighbors and friends. Hi, father, I am a man, little Toshi would cry, stiffening at soldierly attention as he had been coached, trembling with eagerness to please. His short legs splayed out from the knees as if buckling under the weight of his head, were still dimpled with baby fat. Ma, an excellent manly answer, the grown-ups praised, through peals of laughter. Makiko had laughed too, a faint constriction in her throat, for Yatshitsune had remarked to her, when I'm out fighting in the Pacific, that's how I'm going to remember him. After that, she began watching their child closely, trying to memorize what Yatshitsu was memorizing. Later, when her husband was gone, it comforted her to think that the same images swam in both their minds at night. Even today, Toshi's 3-year-old figure is vivid in her mind. On the other hand, she has not fully absorbed the war years, still shrinks from those memories and all that has followed. Foreigners, for instance, are now a familiar sight. American Army jeeps with beefy red arms dangling out the windows roar down Kagane Boulevard, the main thoroughfare just east of Toshi's school. Keep your young women indoors, the neighbors say. Occasionally, Makiko has seen a soldier offering chocolates or peanuts to little children, squatting down to their level, holding out the treat. It seems to her they all have hairy arms, as if to a timid cat. Just yesterday, Toshi came home smiling broadly and carrying chocolates, not one square, but 3. Bile had surged up in Makiko's throat, and before she knew it, she had struck them right out of his hand and onto the kitchen floor. How could you? She choked as Toshi, stunned, burst into sobs. How could you? Those men killed your father. This evening, Makiko has come to the park with a small box of caramels, bought on the black market with some of the money she was hoarding to buy winter yarn. In the future, she will tell him, if you want something so badly, you come to me. Nay, not to them. On a bench in the toddler section, now deserted, she waits for her son to finish his game and the other boys. All the other mothers have gone home to cook dinner. The playground equipment has not been maintained since the beginning of the war. The swing set is peeling with rust. The freestanding animals, the ram, the pig, the rooster, have broken down springs, and their carnival paint has washed away, exposing more rusted steel. Arama! Her Toshi has finally been hit. Makiko feels a mother's pang. He is crossing the line to the other side now, carrying the ball. Makiko notes the ease with which the fallen one seems to switch roles in this game, heaving the ball at his former teammates without the slightest trace of disloyalty. This year, Makiko is allowing Toshi to light the incense each evening before the family altar. He seems to enjoy prayer time much more now that he can use matches. She also regularly changes which photograph of her husband is displayed behind the miniature gong. This month's photograph shows Yashitsune in a cotton yukata, smoking under the ginkgo tree in the garden. Sometimes, in place of a photograph, she displays an old letter or one of his silk set bags, still fragrant after a bit of massaging. To keep Toshi interested, Makiko presents his father in the light of constant renewal. Just talk to him inside your mind, she tells her son. He wants to know what you're learning in school, what games you're playing, just like any other father, nay? Don't leave him behind. Don't ignore him just because he's dead. She wonders if Toshi secretly considers his father a burden, making demands from the altar, like a cripple from a wheelchair. Your father's very handsome in this picture, nay? She says tonight. Within the lacquered frame, her son's father glances up from lighting a cigarette, a bemused half smile on his face, as if he is waiting to make a wry comment. Toshi nods absently, frowning. He slashes at the matchbox with the expert flourish of a second-grade boy. The match rips into flames. Answer properly. You're not a little baby anymore. Hi, mother. Toshi sighs with a weary, accommodating air, squaring his shoulders in a semblance of respectful attention. Makiko remembers with sorrow the big head, the splayed legs of her baby boy. It amazes her that Toshi has no memory of the routine he once performed with his father. What do you remember of him? She prods every so often, hoping to dislodge some new memory. But all that Toshi remembers of his father is being carried on one arm before a sunny window. Ma, what a wonderful memory. Makiko encourages him each time. It must have been a very happy moment. When would this have taken place? Which year? Which month? Would even Yoshitsune have remembered it, this throwaway moment that, inexplicably, has outlasted all the others in their son's mind? She tries conjuring it up as if the memory is her own. For some reason, she imagines autumn, the season Yoshitsune sailed away, October 1942. How the afternoon sun would seep in through the nursery window, golden, almost amber, advancing with the vicious quality of hazen honey or of nostalgia, overtaking sluggish dust motes and even sound. She wishes Toshi could remember the old view from that upstairs window, a sea of gray tiled roofs drowsing in the autumn haze, as yet unravaged by the fires of war. I'm done, Toshi says. What? Already? Are you sure? Hi, Mother. Already heading for the dining room where supper lies waiting on the low table, he slides back the shushu door in such a hurry that it grates on the grooves. Makiko considers calling him back. His prayers are getting shorter and shorter, but the incident with the chocolates is still too recent for another reprimand. She follows him into the dining room. A man who forgets his past, she quotes as she scoops rice into his bowl, stays at the level of an animal. Toshi meets her eyes with a guilty, resentful glance. Go on, she says blandly. Eat it while it's hot. Toshi falls to. In order to supplement their meager rice ration, Makiko continues to mix in chopped kabura radishes, which at least resemble rice in color, as she did during the war. Sometimes she switches to chopped turnips. At first, before the rationing became strict, Toshi would hunch over his rice bowl with his chopsticks, fastidiously picking out one bit of vegetable after another and discarding it on another plate. Now he eats with gusto. It cuts her the things he has grown used to. As a grown man, he will reminisce over all the wrong things, things that should never have been a part of his childhood. This shameful pauper food, a block of peanut paste covered with lint, enemy soldiers amusing themselves by tossing chocolates and peanuts to children. Later, Toshi ventures a question. Makiko has noticed that nighttime, the black emptiness outside, the hovering silence, still cows him a little, stripping him of his daytime cockiness. After his goodnight bow, Toshi remains kneeling on the tatami floor. He says, I was thinking, Mama, about how I'm 7 and how I only remember things that happened after I was 3. So that means I've forgotten a whole half of my life, right? That's right, Makiko says. He is looking up at her, his brows puckered in a look of doleful concentration, which reminds her of his younger days. But it's perfectly normal, Toshi-kun. It's to be expected. He is still thinking. So when I get older, he says, am I going to keep on forgetting? Am I going to forget you too? Makiko reaches out and strokes his prickly crew cut. From this age on, she says, you'll remember everything, Toshi-kun. Nothing more will ever be lost. In the middle of the night, Makiko awakens from a dream in which Yoshi-san is hitting her with a fly swatter. She lies paralyzed under her futon, outrage buzzing in her chest. Details from the dream wash back into her mind. Yoshitsune's smile, distant and amused. The insolent way he wielded the swatter, as if she were hardly worth the effort. A blue sheet of moonlight slipping in through the space between two sliding panels glows in the dark. In the first year or two after his death, this sort of thing would happen often, and not always in the form of dreams. There were times, but hardly ever any more. Why tonight, when in all the middle of washing the dishes or sweeping the alley, some small injustice from her past, long forgotten, would rise up in her mind, blocking out all else till her heart beat hard and fast. Like that time, scarcely a month after their wedding, one Yushitsun had run into his old girlfriend at Najin Station and made such a fuss. His absurd, rapt gaze, the intimate timbre of his voice as he inquired after her welfare. And there was the time, the only time in their entire marriage, when Yoshitsune had grabbed Makiko by the shoulders and shaken her hard. He let go immediately, but not before she had felt the anger in his powerful hands and her throat had choked up with fear. That too was early on in the marriage, before Makiko learned to tolerate his sending sizable sums of money to his mother each month. What is to be done with such memories? They get scattered, left behind. Over the past few years, more pleasant recollections have taken the lead, informing all the rest like a flock of birds, heading as one body along an altered course of nostalgia. She has tried so hard to remain true to the past, but the weight of her need must have been too great, her need to be comforted, her need to provide a legacy for a small, fatherless boy. Tonight, she senses how far beneath the surface her own past has sunk, its outline distorted by deceptively clear waters. Toshi has been counting the days till Tanabata Day. A small festival is being held at the riverbank, the first since the war. It will be a meager affair, of course, nothing like it used to be. No goldfish scooping, no soba noodles, no fancy fireworks. However, according to the housewives at the open-air market, there will be a limited number of sparklers, the nicest kind, Mikiko tells her son, and the traditional corn grilled with shoyu, which can be purchased out of each family's food allowance. Because of an after-dark incident near Kabuta Temple involving an American soldier and a young girl, Makiko's younger brother has come by this evening to accompany them to the festival. Nuburu is a second-year student at the local university. "Nay, big sister, are you ready yet?" He keeps calling from the living room. Makiko is inspecting Toshi's nails and the back of his collar. "Big sister," Naburu says, looking up as Makiko finally appears in the doorway. "Your house is too immaculate. I get nervous every time I come here." He is sitting stiffly on a floor cushion, sipping homemade persimmon tea. "Well," Makiko answers, "I hate dirt." She has switched, like most women, to Western dresses. They require less fabric, but it makes her irritable having to expose her bare calves in public. She tugs down her knee-length dress. "Ah," says young Naburu from his floor cushion, "but I, for one, am fascinated by it. The idea of it, I mean. What's that old saying? Nothing grows in a sterile pond. Just think, big sister, of the things that come out of dirty water. A lotus, for example, or a pearl. Just think. A pearl's nothing more than a grain of dirt covered up by an oyster. And life itself, big sister, billions of years ago, emerging from the primordial muck." "Ma, Nobi-kan," she says, double-checking her handbag for coin purse, ration tickets, and handkerchief. "You seem to be learning some very interesting concepts at the university." Toshi is waiting by the front door in shorts and a collared shirt, impatiently pulling the door open and then shut, open and then shut. Finally, they are on their way, strolling down the narrow alley in the still, muggy evening. The setting sun angles down on the east side of the alley, casting a pink and orange glow on the charred wooden lattices where shadows stretch like the long heads of snails from the slightest of protrusions. In the shadowed side of the alley, one of the buck-toothed Kimura ladies' daughters ladles water from a bucket onto the asphalt around her door, pausing with a good evening bow to let them pass. The water, colliding with warm asphalt, has released a smell of many layers: asphalt, earth, scorched wood, tangy dragon's beard moss over a mellower base of tree foliage, prayer incense, and tatamami straw coming from the Kimura's half-open door. And mixed in with it all, some scent from far back in Makiko's own childhood that falls just short of definition. We Japanese, Noboru is saying, must reinvent ourselves. We must change to fit the modern world. We mustn't remain an occupied nation. He talks of the new constitution, of the new trade agreements. Makiko has little knowledge of politics. She is amused, disquieted too, by this academic young man. Was a mere boy loping past her window with a butterfly net over his shoulder. Fundamental shifts, Noboru is saying, outdated pyramidal structures. He has just begun wearing his hair pomade with an acrid metallic scent. It seems to suggest fervor, fundamental shifts. Toshi-kun, Makiko calls, don't go too far. The boy steps, running. He walks, taking each new step in exaggerated slow motion. So much change, she says to Noboru as she tugs at her cotton dress. And so fast. Other countries had centuries to do it in. So, big sister, Noboru says. So, but we have no choice. That's a fact. You jettison from a sinking ship if you want to survive. The pair approaches Mr. Watanabe, watering his potted morning glories in the twilight. Holding his watering can in one hand, the old man gives them a genteel bow over his cane. Yoshitsun-san, he murmurs politely. Makiko-san. He then turns back to his morning glories, bending over them with the tenderness of a mother with a newborn. Poor Watanabe-san, nay, Noboru whispers. He gets more and more confused every time we see him. Yes, poor Mr. Watanabe, Makiko thinks. Bit by bit, he is being pulled back in, like a slowing planet, towards some core, some necessary center of his past. Laden with memory, his mind will never catch up to Noboru's new constitution, a center of his past. Laden with memory, his mind will never catch up to Noboru's new constitution or those trade agreements, or even the implications of that billboard with English characters, instructions for arriving soldiers, rising above the blackened rooftops and blocking his view of the Haizin Hills. Oddly, Mr. Watanabe's greeting has triggered a memory. Makiko is strolling with Yoshitsun on a summer evening. For one heartbeat, she experiences exactly how things used to be, their commonplace existence, before later events imposed their nostalgia, with a stab of physical recognition that is undefinable, impossible to call up again. Then it is gone, like the gleam of a fish, having stirred up all the waters around her. They walk on in silence. Toshi-kun, she calls out again, slow down. Toshi pauses, waiting for them. He swings at the air with an imaginary bat. Strike-ku, he hisses. It occurs to Makiko how artificial this war has been, suspending people in the same unsustainable state of solidarity. For a while, everyone had clung together in the bomb shelter off Nija Street, thinking the same thoughts, breathing in the same damp air, damp earth, and the same warm, uneasy currents made by bodies at close range. But that is over now. Makiko thinks of her future. She is still full of life and momentum. There is no doubt that she will pass through this period into whatever lies beyond it, but at a gradually slowing pace. A part of her, she knows, will lag behind in the honeyed light of pre-war years. Toshi-kan, she cries, wait! Her son is racing ahead, his long shadow sweeping the sunlit fence as sparrows flutter up from charred palings. Makiko stands out on the veranda, fanning herself with a paper uchiwa. Toshi is already asleep. The night garden is muggy. Mosquitoes are out in full force. She can hear their ominous whine from the hydrangea bush, in between the rasping of crickets, but they no longer target her as they did in her youth. She is thinner now, her skin harder from the sun, her blood watered down from all the rationing. It was a wonderful festival. Shadowy adults bent over their children, helping them to hold sparklers over the glassy water. The sparklers sputtered softly in the dark, shedding white flakes of light. Makiko had watched from a distance. Toshi was old enough, he had insisted, to do it by himself. She had remarked to Noboru how there is something in everyone that responds to fireworks, so fleeting, so lovely in the dark. It was a fine night for Toshi. This corn is so good, nay, Mama? He kept saying, looking up from his rationed 4 centimeters of corn cob. This sure tastes good, nay? The joy on his face, caught in the glow of red paper lanterns, brought a lump to her throat. Tonight there is a full moon. Earlier, at dusk, it was opaque and insubstantial. Now, through shifting moisture in the air, it glows bright and strong, awash with light. For Makiko, the festival owed its luster to all that lay beneath, to all those other evenings of her life and their lingering phosphorescence. Which long ago evenings exactly? They are slowly losing shape, merging together in her consciousness. Perhaps Toshi will remember this night. Perhaps it will rise up again once he is grown. Some smell, some glint of light will bring texture and emotion to a future summer evening, as will his memory of praying before his father's picture or being carried by his father before an open window. That was Aftermath by Mary Yukari Waters. And that was a little bit more Japanese than I was prepared for. Sorry, I don't know any Japanese. I hope I did that story justice because it was quite beautiful. Okay. Thanks for coming. Let that linger, if you'd like. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of Frankenstein Tea. Have a great afternoon. Bye, Dad. Love you. Peace.